Hello, how are you all, my invisible audience? I hope you can hear me. Um, this is my first time doing this, whatever this is called. Thank you, Liberty, for having me on your Meet the Author segment. Um, so, I am Sabyn Javeri. I am the author of Hijabistan and Nobody Killed Her. Hijabistan is my more recent book. Um, I look forward to your questions regarding my book. I hope you have read it. Um, it's a bit odd to just be talking to yourself. But yeah, Hijabistan is a book which is based on short stories around ethnographical research, which has been dramatized of women, Muslim women around the world, in Karachi and in London, in other parts of the world. It's a collection which looks at um, how women um, deal with issues of power and powerlessness. Um, it's a collection which looks at female agency, female oppression, um, and yeah, most importantly, it's a book of stories which come from the heart. So I look forward to your questions. If you have any, please send them my way. So until we get a few questions, I can read a story from Hijabistan. Um, I suppose I should talk about my journey to publication, but really, it's not a very straightforward journey. Um, I've been writing for as long as I can think of. I've been writing, I've been publishing. How was your journey to publication? Okay. I've always written. I've always written stories. I've always read books. Um, I think the first story of mine to be published was in an anthology by Munisa Shamsi. From there on, I started submitting to various magazines, and from magazines, I started submitting to publishers. I worked on a novel, then I worked on a short story collection. So, nothing extraordinary, the way that most authors publish, by writing, by sending out submissions. Yeah. Any specific questions regarding publication? Okay, so until we have a question, I think I'll read something out. Okay, so this story is from Hijabistan. It's called An Irreplaceable Loss. The girl felt as if she would explode. Nevertheless, she kept a straight face as the agent negotiated her pay with the new Baji. 24/7 rates, Baji. I'm not just giving you a new maid, I'm giving you my daughter. At least pay a few thousand rupees more. The girl inhaled deeply, trying hard to stifle her laughter. She was neither young enough to be his daughter, nor he mature enough to act like someone's father. It was all she could do to hold back her laughter, for her sudden, uncontrollable fits of giggles had already cost her the last job where she had laughed at the Baji's new haircut, or the one before that, when she had laughed at the fat kid whose mother couldn't stop telling people how her son never ate anything. She sucked in her already sunken stomach and forced herself to think of the time she had cut her foot on a piece of sharp glass. Baji, the agent was saying, she's very hardworking, only 16, but works like a horse. The Baji looked her up and down, but didn't say anything. Don't go by her young looks, Baji. Believe me, she is very strong. The Baji looked skeptical, but remained silent. The silent type. the girl thought. Those were the toughest. No words, slaps and kicks straight away. Sometimes burns. She didn't feel like laughing so much now. Tough, tougher, toughest. Later, once the agent left her alone there, having taken half her salary in advance as his fee, the Baji finally turned to her. How old are you really? The girl tried hard to remember what the agent had said. 15, she said, scratching her head. No, no, Baji, 60. The Baji rolled her eyes and asked, what did you do at the last house? Dusting, sweeping, laundry, and why did you leave it? The girl shuffled a little and replied, my old Baji moved to Dubai. The woman in the chair threw back her head and laughed. You all have the same excuses. At this rate, there would be no women left in all of Pakistan to hire you people. Everybody's moved to Dubai. The girl watched in fascination the Baji's pearly teeth and her melodious laughter, making a mental note to practice it quietly at night. When the woman stopped laughing, she asked, what's your name? Tarannum, the girl replied. Real name, the Baji said, tapping her foot impatiently. Baji, that is my real name. She could tell the Baji didn't believe her, for her name meant melody. Hardly a name someone would give to the fifth daughter of a drug addict and a malnutrition mother who cleaned houses. You can ask the agent, the girl offered, seeing the suspicious look in the eyes of her new mistress. For surely her kind didn't think poor people could have the imagination to name their children so creatively. Anyhow, she consoled herself, she was used to this. None of the three houses she had worked at before had called her by her real name, finding it either too fake or too flimsy. Call him, Baji. You can check. I am not lying. No need, the woman said, waving a manicured hand with glossy pink nails at her. Look, I'll just call you. The Baji paused to think, and the girl admired the way her lashes seemed to roll back, the clumpy mascara only adding to the thickness. She smiled, slightly excited at the prospect of getting yet another new name. And sure enough, she did not have to wait too long. I will call you Tuba. Taranum sounds too. The Baji's voice trailed off, but her silence had said more than her words could. Doesn't sound like a maid's name, the girl completed the woman's sentence in her heart. Just then the woman's cell phone rang, and the girl watched as she picked it up with her delicate fair hands and started speaking in English. The girl loved the sound of English and observed closely, picking up familiar words here and there, tucking them into her memory the way she collected shells at the dirty, garbage filled beach her Abba took her to on Sundays, hoping to string them in a necklace someday. Okay, the Baji said, clicking off her phone and turning to where the girl sat on the floor. She looked distracted for a second, trying to remember the name she had given the new maid. Tuba, the girl supplied helpfully. Yes, yes, Tuba, the woman said. Saima, she bellowed, and a stocky middle-aged woman appeared almost instantly. Now listen, Tuba. Saima here is my oldest maid. She will show you the work around the house. You can share her quarters. Now look, I didn't argue about your salary, so you must not give me a reason to cut me. Now, no going outside without my permission, no talking to the cook or the driver. I want you to take a bath every other day. There is a water problem, so don't get carried away. Okay? One bucket per bath for all servants. And most importantly, trust. My things, any of my things, better not go missing. Understand? Okay, now go. The girl got up, thinking, same rules everywhere. She wondered if there was a Baji handbook somewhere that they all followed religiously. She placed her hands on the cold floor to raise herself and was about to follow the tough looking Saima when the Baji called her back. Tuba, she said, and at first the girl, unused to the new name, continued to walk. Tuba, are you deaf? The older maid nudged her. Huh? The girl turned around to see the Baji looking irritably at her as she ran her fingers through her long, expensive looking hair. I almost forgot, the Baji said, looking sternly at her. Hand over your cell phone. The girl looked at her toes, hard and stubby with chipped red polish that looked more angry than stylish. Well, the girl looked up to the Baji's hand, outstretched and impatient. Hurry up. The girl looked down again. Okay, listen, I will give it to you if you need to call home. Baji, she began, the woman leaned forward in her chair. Look, I don't allow any affairs, okay? Now hand over the phone and go. I don't have one, the girl said without looking up. The woman stared at her in silence for a good few seconds before she spoke. Listen, if I find one on you, I'll fire you without pay. The Baji's face took on a hard, impenetrable quality, and for a moment the girl considered surrendering the phone. But then she thought, what if he calls? Okay, I'll pause here and see if there are any questions. Okay, what is my future project? Okay, my future project at the moment, as you know, because of the pandemic, coronavirus, it seems that most of us, our lives are sort of on hold. Um, so I was working on something. I want to work on another collection of stories, um, but at the moment it's paused, mainly because I have relocated. I have recently moved to a new country. I started a new job at a new university, and the pandemic hasn't made it any easier. So right now I am just thinking, um, observing how our world is changing so quickly around us, what we call the new normal, masks, social distancing. So, yeah, no project at the moment. There is some things doing at the back of my mind. Um, I do want to do another short story collection, but it's not in the immediate future, maybe a couple of years down the road. Um, Hijabistan, as you know, only came out last year, so there's still a bit of buzz around it. I'm still doing readings for Hijabistan. I'm still, there was a podcast recently. Sanam Saeed read out some of the stories from Hijabistan. So yeah, still sort of basking in the glory of Hijabistan. Okay, any literary masterpieces, novel, book, or any author which had left an everlasting impact on you, and you would like to read it again and again? I think my all-time favorite author is Ismat Chugtai. Um, I love the story Lihaf. I love her story Ek Shohar Ki Khatir, All for a Husband is the translation. Um, I think reading Ismat Chugtai was really life-changing for me. Um, I think she is a literary master. I think her work are, literary masterpieces. For me personally, it was life changing because growing up in Pakistan, and especially during, a dictatorship, um, I didn't feel that as a woman, I could talk about certain issues. I didn't feel that I could break those silences around some of the issues which we considered too bold for girls. And I think reading her gave me a sort of voice. Um, it was really shocking for me to see that a story like Lehaf had been written, 50 years ago, um, by an Indian Muslim woman who was writing in my national language, Urdu. And it was so critically acclaimed, and she was writing about topics such as sexuality, child abuse, sham marriages, um, and for me as a writer, it really gave me permission um, to write a book like Hijabistan, which also deals with some very bold issues, with some very disturbing ideas, with very difficult lives that women face. So yeah, I would say most of the work by Ismet Chugtai has really left an everlasting impact on me. What inspired me to write this book? Okay, so before this book, I had written Nobody Killed Her, which was acclaimed as a sort of a feminist novel because it is about the story of a female leader, political leader. Yeah, yeah, a lot of people who reviewed it, who enjoyed it, said that, oh, they really liked this character of this kick ass, female leader who wasn't daunted by, the boys' club and so, by the patriarchy around her and all the misogyny in politics in countries, Asian countries. And I thought, I want to carry on this, and I want to write stories about inspirational women. And I thought at that time, I had recently moved back to Karachi after living in London for a long time. And I was seeing all these. I was seeing a lot of students. I was teaching at IBA, and I had a lot of students in my class who wore the hijab, and they used public transport, and they were attending classes. And I saw a lot of women going to university. And I thought, I want to write about these, amazing young girls who wear the hijab, but they do not conform to a sort of a stereotypical impression of, someone who is submissive, which is how we tend to stereotype. I'm not saying that that's my opinion, but I sort of wanted to research that. And I thought I'm going to write a book about women who wear the hijab. But as I started writing this book, I realized that different women were wearing the hijab for different reasons. Some were wearing it as, for social mobility because they felt less harassed on public transport if they were wearing an abaya and a hijab. Some were wearing it for religious reasons. Some were wearing it, for convenience. And I realized that it's not the way you dress that defines you. The hijab is more metaphorical than physical. And that became a much more interesting topic to me. And I started researching what the hijab means to them as a metaphor. What is it that they are veiling? What is it that they are covering up? Is it their desires? Is it their sexuality? Is it their ambition? Is it their sadness? Is it their loss? Is it their power? Is it their powerlessness? What is it that the hijab is hiding? And I became more interested in the divide that the hijab created between these women and the society, between these women and the men around them, between these women and other women. So that's what became much more interesting to me, and I started writing about that, and that's how this book came about. What is my work schedule like when I'm writing? Okay, so I previously didn't have a schedule, but now I do. Now I've become much more disciplined because I have grown in my career as an academic, because my children are growing up. So I have realized that I do need to be very disciplined if I want to achieve any sort of writing output. So my schedule is that I tend to write in the morning. I tend to get up very early in the morning. I do a bit of yoga. I drop my daughter to school, and then I come back and I write until it's time to pick her up, which is at 11. So I try and get those 2-3 solid hours of writing in before the distractions of life get in the way. And after that, I don't think about writing. I just switch off, and whatever I'm doing, I don't think about writing as in like creative writing. I don't think about that. So yeah, that's my writing schedule. That get writing out of the way when your brain is still fresh, and then I get on with the rest of my day. Making lunch, picking up my children, um, paying the bills, whatever it is that comes with daily life. Oh, thank you. And that comes from my wonderful friend Nadja, who is also herself a fabulous entrepreneur, a designer who runs Adorn. Shameless plug-in. All right. When am I going to start teaching again? I never stopped teaching. I was teaching at Habib University, and then last year I started teaching at New York University in Abu Dhabi, and I'm still teaching. I teach writing. I'm a professor of writing. How long does it take you to write a book? Okay. Um, I don't think it's quantitative. I don't think I can sort of say that I started at A and I ended at, B. Um, I think it's like an ongoing process. I think I think the actual writing of it actually only took me one summer. In 2018, I sat down and I penned all these stories down during my summer break. But I think the creative process actually started much earlier, and yeah, I'd been thinking about this for a long time. I'd been thinking about this for 2, 3 years. I had been looking at some ethnographic research that a few colleagues were doing. So yeah, I think the process, the research took much longer, and then thinking about how to present this information, that took quite long, but the actual writing only took a couple of months. Okay, when did you first realize you wanted to be a writer? Um, I think I still haven't realized that. I still feel surprised when someone introduces me as a writer. I think it's very hard to think of yourself as a writer because it seems, for those of us who love books and who grew up reading books, it's something that you sort of idealize and fantasize about. So I think the realization never really comes. Um, but I think I knew I wanted to write because I knew I wanted to express myself. I knew I wasn't seeing my story reflected in the literature around me. I used to paint when I was younger. I trained with Reza. I wanted to paint. I wanted that to be my career. After I got married, I moved abroad, and I didn't have access to the big, huge canvases that we can get so easily in Pakistan. Paints, everything was quite expensive. Paper and pen was readily available. So I think the desire to get my story out was really strong. The desire to express myself creatively in some way or the other. And I think that's when I started writing. I always used to write diaries. I always wrote letters, diaries. I was always a bit of a storyteller. I love telling a story with lots of masala. And all my friends know now that, you have to like discount some of the stuff that I'm saying because I love to add drama to all my stories. But yeah, so I think I always knew that I wanted to tell stories. The format, I think, came in the early 2000s when I started writing instead of painting, and my story started getting published. Of course, why not? I mean, who wouldn't, right? Yes, definitely. I definitely want my books to be published in Pakistan. I actually did two anthologies of Pakistani students because I think it is so important for us to be heard locally before we are heard globally. It's so important for us to tell our stories to our people, for our stories to be accessible. Obviously, if a book is published in Pakistan, the pricing reflects that. It has a much bigger audience. It can reach a lot more people. So yes, I think being published in Pakistan is every Pakistani writer's dream, right? Um, and it's wonderful that in the last few years there's been a sort of a revival of publishing presses in Pakistan. There have been a few niche ones. There are some other new ones coming out. I think it's called Lighthouse, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Liberty is also publishing. I may be mistaken, but I do know that there's been a bit of a boom, and there are more and more publishers coming up. Any resources available to learn polish short story writing? Any online or otherwise workshops? Yeah, there are quite a few. There are quite a few resources available. There's one that I subscribe to. It's called Curtis Brown. That's a literary agency. If you sign up for their newsletter, they send you these prompts every day or every other week. So yeah, it's called Curtis Brown. If you go onto their website and you sign up for the newsletter, they'll send you prompts. That's one online agency. If you want to get feedback, you could look at Avron. They're now doing online courses. So that's Avron, Avron, short fiction courses. There's the Faber Academy. You can sign up with them. They offer online creative writing classes. Um, so yeah, there are quite a few resources available. There is also if you Google find the time to write, that's also a really good resource. That's a fellow author who runs a website called Find the Time to Write, and they also send you daily prompts and sort of inspirational quotes for you to start writing and polishing. Okay, so lovely to hear from all of you, and I really enjoyed answering your questions, and I hope you enjoyed my reading. It was really nice to hear from all of you, and thank you to all of those who took out the time to, send in your questions. Thank you so much to Liberty Books for organizing this, and I hope if you have not yet, I hope you will get a chance to read Hijabistan and also Nobody Killed Her. Okay, and keep writing. Best of luck.